It's a beautiful night in the hood. It's a beautiful night in the hood. Gonna be hanging out in the hood.
Hi, welcome to Almost Cooperstown.
I'm Mark.
And this is Gordon, and we love talking about baseball.
On the date that this episode drops, April 1st, 2021, it'll be opening day of the new Major League Baseball season.
Yeah, we're recording this, a few days out from the beginning of the season, and it's just kind of interesting that compared to where we were when essentially last season started, it's a regular baseball season. We have 162 games of baseball coming up.
That's funny you say that because I realized we did that in May last year, right? That's when the season started. So we've only been 10 months since we've had another season preview show, which is unusual.
Weird, yeah.
So, 162 games, and there's been a lot of talk about are the pitchers going to be ready for this? They haven't thrown a whole season, and how are you going to manage it in six-man rotations? So, it should be very interesting to see, what happens because of the shorter season last season and how that impacts what might happen this season.
I wouldn't be surprised if, just some general things. We saw more arm injuries with pitchers over the course of a season, just because as much as you don't want it to be, a year of not regular throwing will have effects on people just because your body is conditioned and now it's not quite as conditioned.
The Blue Jays, one of my up-and-coming teams, and for a pick at least, they lost their closer for the season, Kirby Yates, arm injury, out for the year. And, that's a tough loss for a team that has high aspirations.
The thing is, it's going to be easy to attribute a lot of these things to the shortened pitching season, but until we see it play out over a full season, it's just as much that you have regular injuries to pitchers and players, even during spring training, that knock them out for the season. So it's just easy to attribute it to just something other than just the fact that people do get hurt.
Right. Last season, we talked about, we had a separate episode on the jarring new rule changes for the 2020 season, and those changes were the DH for both leagues, something that isn't going to be around this season.
Yeah, unfortunate for our Mets, but...
Yes, I think of all the teams in Major League Baseball, the one that really kind of it smarts the most, and Manfred can't come in at the last minute, 3 days before the season, and go, we are going to have a DH, and if you don't have one, you better go find one.
I still think it's something on the table, but I understand why for this season they just kind of went back. Interestingly, of the two rules, they kept the 3 batter rule, which I thought of the two, you would have swapped those in terms of what you keep.
Yeah, maybe I'm softening a little bit on that.
You know what? Also, Manfred probably realized La Russa was coming back to baseball, and he was just like, "Look, I'm just getting ahead of this."
He's changing every pitcher. That's great. Very true. Right. So there will be no DH in the National League, but they'll get into that at the collective bargaining agreement at the end of this season, and it could be a messy offseason.
Oh, are they keeping this guy on second base rule in the extras inning?
To my knowledge, they have the runner on second base in extra innings as well.
That's good.
I'm in favor of that rule. I'm fine moving it around if you want to make it later in the 12th inning.
Yeah,
or put him on first in the 11th.
I like at least having one clean regular inning of extra inning baseball.
The 10th inning should be a clean inning.
It's the same way you have a 5-minute overtime period. There should be a set of innings, but I think at a certain point, we don't need to have a 7 overtime game in hockey on a Tuesday night. We don't need to have a 19-inning baseball game.
That's my point. And as a point made last year, your pitching staff gets wrecked, right? So let's say you're playing a team and it's your last game and you end up one of those stupid 16-inning games, destroying your bullpen, and now you go face the Dodgers. Oh yeah,
enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. Your bullpen's just dead.
And is anybody outside of the novelty of it? It's not like you're watching good baseball in a lot of those games.
It's funny to say I'm a baseball old timer, purist to a way, but I'm actually there's certain things let's just not keep doing them because that's the way we always did them.
And that's how I feel about these super law extra. That's why I'm fine with that rule. I think you could just tweak it a little bit to make it a little less. Well. I'd love to start it with a scaling thing, like you have the 10th and 11th with no guy on, then in the 12th you start having a guy on first. You don't necessarily need to go right to guy on second 10th inning, but I think scaling it up just to basically ensure the fact that probably at a certain point one team's going to score and end the game.
So, and I'm glad you talk about testing because that's what they're doing this season in the minor leagues, testing some new rule changes that they might consider bringing to the major leagues. The first of those I'll mention is the larger non-slippery bases at the AAA level. all the AAA games. But
I think less slippery is a good thing.
right. I don't know why were they slippery in the first place. I wonder.
It's one of those things where you're like, well, but why would we make them slippery? What did we gain by this?
And they're only a little bit larger. They're so I guess potentially the runner is slightly closer between the bases than.
You know what I think it will help with? It'll result in less hand and foot injuries because there's more space on the bag.
Well, that's exactly what it's for.
That's what it's for.
And to me, good idea.
Good idea.
Good idea. 15-second pitch clocks are going to be used in the low A leagues out in the West. So that's 15 seconds is pretty quick. I don't know if I've ever seen one that quick. So that'll be interesting.
You know what? Here's the problem. It's really hard to know because we've never clocked them previously. So it's not like I really know how long the average.
Leagues have had pitch counts. I'm pretty sure
pitch clocks, but I don't know as a fan what the average
I don't know either.
time between pitches
so
is.
there'll be an interesting data point to come out of that, I hope. And then limiting. Here's one that limiting 2 pickoff throws to first base in the low A leagues.
I don't know. It's almost interesting.
Yeah, well, okay. I guess that does make it interesting.
Well,
yes,
because now the guy on first base can play with the pitcher a lot more because with every pickoff throw, the pitcher expends. So as soon as he uses one, now he's in an interesting thing.
Now he's only got one left.
Now he's only got one left.
Right.
So he knows that if you don't guess right, you throw over and he's safe again. Now the guy is just like, I can go far.
Right. So that
now the question is obviously at a certain point, I'm assuming the guy can step off. It's not like the guy gets into the pickoff move and then he's just free to start running because he can't throw over.
Well, actually, in all the low A leagues, the pitcher now, in order to throw with the first base, they are making them step off the rubber physically
instead of doing a pickoff.
So no
move.
more Andy Pettitte move to first base. You have to actually step off the rubber and then throw it.
And considering the Andy Pettitte move was a balk and all but name, getting rid of that's probably a good thing.
I guess the point would be we all would like to see more stealing because it's fun for the fans to watch stolen bases, particularly successful ones.
And weirdly, I think of all of the things that I've noticed, both at home and on TV, nothing gets the boo reaction as quickly as multiple pickoff throws to first base. The fans just hate it for some reason.
But that's like a baseball tradition. Who cares? You know,
right. Who cares?
It's like Cracker Jacks.
But it does kind of make sense considering how few guys steal bases.
Right.
Like, do we really need to have these sequences where he throws over like 5 times in a pitch span?
Experimenting with it at the minor league level to see how it impacts the game. Interesting. I'm willing to look at it.
I think you're gonna have to tweak it more because 2 per batter is rough.
Yeah.
Especially over a long at bat.
So how about in AA this year? They're going to make them play with 4 players on the dirt infield.
So you can't go all the way into the outfield.
Can't go to that right field pocket, right? Where I saw McNeil out there in spring training game, standing out there shaking hands with Conforto and then fielding the ball.
And then cleanly fielding the ground ball and getting it out.
Throwing him out, right?
I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That's getting a little too restrictive.
If they make him play with lacrosse sticks out there, I'm really going to be upset because when you start limiting where they can go, I just don't like it.
What you have to show is that you would have to show me that the shift is having a discernible effect on the actual major league average to the point where it's becoming a detriment to the watchability of the game.
Well, no. Then now you got into 2 things. It definitely hurts the players' batting average.
Right.
They've said that, and the players call them lost hits. And I joke and say those aren't lost hits; those are outs.
Yeah,
they are outs. Okay, if you'd hit the ball the other way, where there was nobody standing out there, you'd have had it.
They just have to adjust. It's going to take time, and eventually,
and they will,
because eventually guys
are major leaguers.
Yeah, and guys are already starting to do that. That's what Conforto did last year. He got a ton of hits by just being like, okay, I guess they're going to leave all of left field open. So because what's going to happen is that pitchers aren't good enough to pitch against these guys and put the ball in a spot where he can only pull the ball but also not hit the ball well.
Right, and I understand it's frustrating for a hitter to hit a ball on the nose into a place where it used to be a hit.
And now it's not.
And now it's not because there's somebody standing there. I don't like the rule, but it'll be interesting to see also data-wise if they have enough data to be able to say, here is where the impact was and what happened. I didn't know. Did guys get more hits?
How many more hits did you get?
I don't know. The last is the automatic ball strike. They're going to try in the low A leagues in the Southeast. So I don't know exactly what that means. I saw that as a rule change, and so I assume it's some sort of robotic call for balls and strikes.
Yes, it's a robotic balls and strikes thing.
And I've been asked about robotic calls for. It's like I really don't want to take out the umpire from the game behind the plate, certainly on the bases, making calls. It's something just endemic to baseball. I do believe technology can help with better umpiring, and some people think better training. But it's really hard to see. Well, look, in tennis, they took away the lines people by putting in these electric eye lines because the human eye can't see the ball at that speed. I would think calling a ball on a strike is pretty close to that for an umpire. It's just hard. And we'd like them to have some aid, or I would like them to have them some sort of a technological aid to allow them to be more accurate. But to say no more balls and strikes. The problem
is I don't know how you create an aid that just doesn't supplant them.
I don't know either.
That's the problem.
I don't have
How
the
do you
answer to
create
that.
something that helps them, that's good enough to help them, but then wouldn't just also be better than them by themselves?
Yeah, yes.
Like, why would you create a system where it's like, oh, okay, well, now they can be corrected? Well, if the thing just knows the right answer from the beginning, why don't we just use that?
I'm a dreamer. I just don't want to see the umpires go. So hopefully,
no, you can't get rid of them, because the same way you can't get rid of the umpire in tennis, you can't get rid of the base umpires. They can't do. There's certain things that it will be too difficult for them to judge, and for the speed of the game, it won't be worth it. But for balls and strikes, I think it's not worth the frustration. Baseball is lucky that it probably has the best overall refereeing between the big three, between, NBA, the NBA, NFL, and the MLB.
As much to do with the speed of the game.
As much to do with the speed of the game. But they're still not great. Like, think about
they're not perfect, nor
think
you
about
should
how
expect that.
Remember last year how frustrated people were about the umpires? There were a lot of really wacky calls. And I remember, especially,
and now we have all this ability to really see it in almost real time.
So it's tough for them because they're facing scrutiny that, you know what, they're probably actually better than their peers were.
Right.
20 to 40 years
trained,
ago.
and they have
they're
better
trained,
understanding. I agree
better
with that.
understanding.
Yes.
Except the guys throw harder now, and we have computers that can determine strikes and balls down to like an inch that they can't possibly do with a human eye.
How do you give them here? Angel Hernandez, one of our favorites.
Yeah.
Here's ball. It's ball one. Ball one. You just put your hand like, I'm not going to question it. The thing told me it was a ball. I'm not even going to bother looking.
Which actually kind of interestingly kind of segs into one of the big discussions coming out of last year's World Series and into this year's, kind of the way we're expecting, one, just with people making predictions, and two, just how people look at baseball. So obviously in the Game 7 of last year's World Series, Kevin Cash pulled Blake Snell because that's what they had been doing all year. That's what the analytics had said to them. And you even kind of run that into making prediction with, making a season prediction like we are for the teams, because it's pretty easy to just say, well, the data pans out that says these are the best teams in each division. These are going to be the best teams in each division.
Right. I would think that you and we haven't discussed our specific picks. We talk a lot, so obviously we have an idea of which teams we like and don't, but probably not so much about the particular outcomes this season potentially.
Yeah.
But chances are, based upon what we read and what we look at, we're going to come up with very similar choices.
And also, just realistically, the landscape of the league didn't shift that much this offseason.
Right.
The rich got richer for the most part.
It makes anomalies more difficult to happen, like the Marlins.
Yeah. Realistically, I'd say we had, 3 teams that super up-jumped last season?
Well, if you say... Are the Reds one of those teams?
Yeah, the Reds. They
I called it.
We called it, but no, I don't think anybody expected them to be that good.
Right. And I don't expect it's going to happen this season either. I think, the idea that you would just be driven only by analytics and data, as Kevin Cash basically just fell back on that and said, this is what we did. And so, hold my hands up. Sorry, I followed the data.
And I think it's tough because baseball is such a data-driven sport, and we have such easy ways to quantify everything. So, when you look at, I think I wouldn't be surprised if our picks for most of these division winners, outside of maybe a bit of homerism in the NL East, I'd almost expect us to be kind of in line with just about everybody else, because there's really not a lot of reason for any teams, barring major injury, to have shifted massively based on this offseason.
And now that you mentioned that, when I look at my picks, I think pretty much they're the same ones as last year, except for a few differences.
Right, exactly. We kind of know who
So should we go ahead?
Let's go ahead. Let's start with the AL East. We'll just go by East, Centrals, and West.
Okay, and you name your teams, and then I will name what I think their issue is. You can tell me whether you agree with that.
I think that's a fair way of doing it. So, I mean, I think if we just go down the list, starting with my division winner, the Yankees.
Yep.
It's hard to not pick them.
I think they could win the
I
division
think this is literally
easily.
the exact same conversation we had last year. We have, if you go purely based on who their players are and what they're expected to perform. Now, Luke Voigt's going to be out for 3 weeks. He's having surgery. Not going to be a big deal, but
a lot of hitting.
I mean, they have so much hitting.
Luke Voigt led the major leagues in home runs last year.
The Yankees are going to have the same problem that they've had for the last 10 postseasons. Yep. Do they have enough pitching?
Yeah, well, the word I use for them is health, which goes into that pitching, right? Because you're counting on Jameson Taillon, you're counting on
God forbid Garrett Cole gets hurt.
Already they've got Herman, they've got guys that
all of their pitchers need to stay. All of them. They don't have the pitching depth like some teams do.
And if Garrett Cole isn't really, really good the whole season, I don't know that they're going to have an easy time winning their division at all. So, and they've got so much hitting, and the rest of the division
is relatively well. They're a 2.5 team division, maybe 3, depending on how you feel about the Blue Jays.
Okay, right. I have the Blue Jays coming in second. I think this is an up year for the Blue Jays, and a couple of things. If they're pitching, for them, it's the pitching.
Yeah, 100%.
If it comes through and they manage to make a deal, and Nate Pearson comes back later on in the season and kind of gives them what they need.
If Ryu is the guy that he was last season, he can be that number one starter.
And Semien at shortstop, they've done some nice things there.
They've got enough young talent on that team. I just think it's going to be interesting to see what happens in a 162 game season when a team like that hits their bad stretch. They're really young, and their veteran leadership. I mean, who is the veteran leader on that team?
Right. It's not Kevin Biggio or Bichette, but they've been there a couple of years already.
But they're not
Vlad Guerrero Jr. No, I don't think so.
This is where it gets tough. You're now burdened with last season. You were the trendy dark horse pick. This season, people just expect you to be good.
The real thing that I think about with the Blue Jays is in terms of playing their games. I guess they're going to play in Florida. Until things, it's just they haven't played a home game in like a season and a half,
and playing in Florida like that has to stay.
It's hard. It's hard for them, and I don't know that it'll affect their ability, but it's a lot. It's a lot for that team. So, do you have the Blue Jays second or the Rays second?
I had the Rays second.
Yeah.
I just think that for me, it's hard for me to believe that the Rays can have it all kind of break right for them again, like it felt like it did last season.
They did lose Blake Snell and Charlie Morton, for what it's worth, both of whom pitched very sensationally for them last year. And they've got some younger guys coming on, and Glasnow looked great in the playoffs. But I think they gave up a lot of pitching, and that's not easy to come back from.
Randy Arozarena was the guy that we saw in the postseason. Is he going to do that over? I mean, if he does that over a full MLB season, dude's one of the best players in baseball.
Up man is a favorite for the Rookie of the Year for sure, but in order for them to be successful, they need him to be.
He has to be that guy. If he's not that guy, that changes a lot.
I think
for that team.
They lost the first baseman, right? He went back to playing Korea.
I think so. Yeah,
I think he left. So and then you've got
kind of the two, like the next two teams. Their problem can be kind of quantified as everything.
Right. Well, I had that for the Orioles for sure. And the Red Sox. Yeah.
What do they do good?
Yeah. I think
their lineups okay. Their pitching's okay, but they're outclassed by.
They're going to get Chris Sale back at some point,
which will help. But until they get Chris Sale back, and he's Chris Sale, which you're probably not going to try and push him for this season.
And Rodriguez was their opening day starter, who isn't going to pitch for them now. The opening day starter is going to be Eovaldi, I think.
I mean, who's Eovaldi?
They're a little bit on the old side there. So all right, so let's go to the AL Central. We'll just go down.
Yeah, the Orioles. We'll give the Orioles are in. They are now finally rebuilding properly.
Right, like with intention.
With intention.
Not by accident.
Not by accident. Like, I will give them the credit. They have really, they are trying to go and do it the right way now, because we forget that they're only 5 or 6 years removed from being a really good team in that AL East. They were a playoff team not that long ago.
Right.
And then once they kind of started to fall off, they tried to make a bunch of moves to keep themselves in that contention, and just none of them worked out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But now they're doing the right thing and being like, okay, time to reshape our team. So that's at least a team that's doing what some of the team that when we moved to the AL Central, they did correctly at the top now.
The problem for the Orioles is that they play the Yankees and the Blue Jays a combined 38 times.
Yeah, that hurts. The problem is that they're also in the AL East, which is a brutal division to be in.
Right.
So moving to the Central, I mean, here is a team that's doing what the Orioles want to do now. They went from worst to first. That White Sox team was devoid of talent a couple seasons ago, and now they are flying high.
So do you have them as your division winner?
I still do.
Okay. I have their one issue I wrote down, La Russa.
Yeah. Does Looser have? I mean, that's the question. Is that, and it's also for them. Yes, they were great last season. They were fantastic, and I have less reason compared to them than some of the other teams that performed super well. I have less reason to doubt that for them that was kind of fluky, and that we were kind of they were already a dark horse candidate.
A lot of their guys that came through and had good seasons.
But it didn't feel like guys were having
career years.
Tim
Anderson, I expect him to have a better year this year.
Yeah. The question is, can La Russa reach a team?
Right.
Especially when he's not in a situation where he's basically been entrenched.
No, and his being a guru in terms of his forward thinking and in his Hall of Fame managerial career is based a lot on data and analytics. But today it's in spades, so to speak. There's so many more things to keep track of and be aware of. And I don't know. He's been part of the game in other aspects all the way. So it's not like he's out of touch.
No, there's no way he's out of touch.
He's out of touch with being around players,
right?
All the time.
And I think the big difference also is it's out of touch being around players that have achieved success without him. Mm-hmm. So that's a tough thing. Most managers come into a job when the team hasn't been performing. In this case, he's coming into a team that did perform.
Right.
So the players are like, okay, what are you? It's not the same. The power dynamic is different. It's not like you've been brought in to help teach up a bunch of youngsters and whip them into, competitive shape. No, they're ready. You have to bring them over the line. And that's a different kind of job for La Russa.
So it's probably for that reason that I picked the Twins. I'm sure you have them second.
Yes.
Right. I have them winning the division just because they bring it every single year, and I think Baldelli's a good manager. They,
for me, it would be hitting. Do they have enough hitting in that lineup over a full course of a season?
And I think that their bullpen took a hit. I mean, Trevor May came over to pitch for the Mets. That hurts them.
Yeah.
And so that's not a division. Not that any are good ones to not have a good bullpen. And
no, because you have decent. This is the AL Central is a pretty strong division.
Right. The Indians are a decent team.
Yeah. They're just the problem for the Indians. If we're kind of moving on to them, if they've just given up too many of their best players. Yeah. I mean, you still got Jose Ramirez. You still have guys, but. I mean, you gave away Carrasco and Lindor, and I think other guys moved on as well.
Yeah, and you don't have Kluber's not there obviously anymore. So you're like your number one is like Cy Young Award winner Shane Bieber, and the number 2 is Zach Plesac.
Like you've got still good players, but you're not nearly the same team that you were.
Yeah, 500 is probably in there.
And you're in a tough division because the Royals are a team that are going to be pesky. I don't think they're going to be great.
Not big. Not had power for them. Their power is what you have to wonder. Do they have enough?
Do they have any?
Yeah, right.
Like, I mean, they signed Perez to the extension. They just did that.
Yep.
But I mean, for the most part, they'll be kind of similar to that really good Royals team.
Not a lot of pop.
Not a lot of pop, but they're going to run around,
slice and dice
you. And I just think that the problem is for them is that they don't quite have enough strength overall on that team. They don't have the pitching strength like they did.
No, they're not anywhere near as good a pitching team. And then that would make the last place team. And I guess I could have done the same thing we did with the Orioles or the Tigers, going everything. It just AJ Hinch I think is managing there now, back in the major leagues. Which is interesting, only from the standpoint that somebody did take a chance on this guy.
It makes sense for the Tigers, though, because they're so far out that like it's not going to be I mean, they're much like the Orioles. They're a complete rebuilding team,
Right.
and that's what they're committing to right now.
And the Tigers are too. You know, and Miggy's going to come out and play another season
because you know what? There's no pressure. And nobody expects anything of that team. He could have his full farewell tour for a full season.
I hate to say it. It's not like he's taking somebody's job.
Yeah, and he's still performing. The dude can still hit.
That's what I'm saying. So he's still a future Hall of Famer, as we say all the time. So you go over to the AL West, and I had a first place team, and I'm sure our first two places. So last year I picked the A's, and it turned out to be correct. This year I'm going to pick the Astros, and I'm going to write there. One word is also health.
Even more so because they're much thinner than they were when they were the complete top dog. You already are down Verlander, so if you lose any of the starting pitching depth, that's going to really hurt.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Greinke and McCullers, and they just signed into a deal. That's a pretty nice,
But they're getting up there in age. And
Framber Valdez, okay, we're hoping he'll be good.
I mean, he looked good in the postseason last year.
Jose Urquidy, now you're getting down there going, okay, what if one of these guys gets hurt, and where are you going? And they picked up, obviously, they finally signed Odorizzi. And so that really helps.
But I mean, I think you also have to look at on the other side, offensively and defensively. Altuve, at least defensively, is starting to look like he's lost a step.
Definitely.
And Correa was never the greatest defensive shortstop.
He's probably a future third baseman, although he wants to be paid like a shortstop because he's in a contract year.
Right.
So, yeah, he's watching what's going on with Lindor. Going, I think the Astros are offered him $120 million for 6 years, $20 million a year, and he's like, no thanks,
no thank you.
I'll wait to see what Lindor gets, and then we'll talk. So, I mean, look, Altuve, Bregman, Brantley, Yordan Alvarez, Gurriel.
But you lost George Springer. You lost big parts of that team.
Yes, you did.
And I think the question is,
you're hoping Kyle Tucker is going to be, something special. That's going to be
you need the DH Yondor.
Right. Yeah.
He needs to be the guy that because he was Alvarez. He was
hit or miss.
Literally. He needs to be a little more consistent if they're going to be, take the division again. But
I think Presley is the closer.
I think this is a division where ultimately it's a two-team race, and I think one of them is going to win it going away.
And so you're going to like this. The reason I didn't pick the Athletics, and that, what I had for them was self-belief, because for some reason I just think the A's always doubt themselves. They managed to win the division, but they never managed to go anywhere in the playoffs. Anyway, this is a team whose projected starting second baseman is Jed Lowry.
Jed Lowry is going to play a baseball game.
So, Met fans, as we are, we had 2 years of Jed Lowry.
Did?
Did he play 5 games for the Mets?
I don't think I ever saw him take an at bat.
I mean,
in all honesty.
So I could have written health there, but the A's in general, Elvis Andrus, who's been around a long time.
Yeah, he's ancient at this point.
They got the two Mats, Chapman and Olsen, two of the best players in the league. Mark Canha at DH, nice player.
They have some.
Yeah, but
pitching.
The pitching,
it's deep, but it's not
right. They have a lot of guys. You go down. Look, Manea is projected their number 4, and I think he's a really good pitcher.
Right, but there's no.
Frankie Montas is their number 1. There's not that much difference between Montas.
It makes them really good. I think for the regular season, because you're almost always going to trot a guy out there that's capable of winning you the game.
And there, folks, you have the Oakland A's.
Yep,
every year it's the same thing.
They are gonna be a pesky team to play because they're going to be in every game.
Who is your third place team?
Angels.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think this year they've added some guys.
I think Mike Trout has a chance to make the playoffs, maybe? Wow.
God, I hope so.
Yeah, me too.
I would just because I don't want him to have to move on from the Angels in order to do it. Something about that because it almost hurts his greatness argument if they can't get to the postseason.
Almost. Yeah, people will talk about it, and we'll be some of those people.
Even though I would never really hold it against him, you would have to point out that he had to go to another team. Now, granted, I would also, you have the huge quantifier of the Angels have given him no help this entire time.
So you have Rendon there now, Iglesias at shortstop, Dexter Fowler, Ohtani, who's had an unbelievable spring.
He's looked like
right. So, but if you flip that, you put it onto the pitching rotation. rotation. So wherever you think Ohtani is, how much he's going to pitch and whatnot, he's certainly not your number one, I guess. Dylan Bundy, Andrew Haney, Griffin Canning, Jose Quintana, Alex Cobb. They better score a lot of runs.
If the Angels are very much a dark horse team because they're an if team.
If those guys pitch,
they could be really good.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's a division that's still open enough because the Astros are a team that are they need guys to perform. They don't have a given performer all over like they kind of used to have. They don't have the pitching depth, so they could stumble. The A's could stumble. So that's a winnable division, I think, kind of, except unfortunately for the last two teams.
Right. So, and we're not going to get on this program into the off season of the Mariners, which has to be one of the craziest and dumbest off seasons you've ever seen. But they're just a young team that's hoping they're going to have players to watch this year that they're going to see in a few years.
Right. You know, like the Rangers. You're just farther along in it, that you're rebuilding. You've made a bunch of trades. You've got good guys starting to come up through your organization. And now
Tyler France, you're hoping for. Evan White won a Gold Glove last year.
They have
J.P. Crawford at shortstop.
Kelenic, right?
Kalenic.
Kalenic,
whatever you say.
Yeah. He's
not going to start the season,
but he's going to be. I think
he's going to play for them. So that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. And if you're a Mariner fan, you're like, okay, well, you have guys that are coming up. It's just how many of them pan out. That's going to be how quick this goes. Because if 3 or 4 of those guys hit, all of a sudden you can be on the upswing really quick. But if only 1 or 2 of them hit, it could just take longer. And
so I'll give you the two pitchers on the Mariners team. You'll know these pitchers. Okay?
I'm assuming one of them is Felix Hernandez.
The number that is not
I'm kidding,
true.
because he's actually gone.
James Paxton is their number 2, by the way.
Yeah.
Marco Gonzalez is their number 1 opening day starter. Chris Flexen is their number 3.
That's terrifying.
And their closer is Rafael Montero.
No way.
That is true.
He's their
closer. That's right. So they turned Montero for Met fans. So who know, he was another young Met pitcher with promise, didn't pan out, and has bounced around, been hurt a lot, and all that stuff, and was made into a relief pitcher. And he's the closer.
The biggest compliment I can pay Montero is that he's not Henry Mejia,
or Anthony Young, who's one guy who lost 21 games in a row for the Mets. So that's a real ignominy there. Okay, and the last place team clearly would be the
Rangers,
the Texas Rangers. Who's the real reason for watching the Texas Rangers this season is because you didn't get to go to the brand new ballpark last year.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of interesting because I think baseball across every division, I feel like there's a clear last place team that is rebuilding right now. And it's very there's not one.
You may have 2 in the AL.
You may have 2 in some divisions, but there's a clear basement dweller in almost every division, which is really interesting.
You're so right.
So who do you think is going to have the best record overall in the AL?
I'm saying the Yankees.
Saying the Yankees? I think only because I think they're less likely to get beaten up by the rest of their division like the White Sox will.
Okay, and I think that's fair. White Sox, the Twins and the White Sox will beat each other up. That's actually a tougher division for the teams. They're closer in ability because the difference between the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Orioles is much bigger.
So we've got the Yankees. We both have the Yankees, and you have the Twins, right?
I have the Astros in the AL Championship Series against the Yankees.
Hey, Astros. I think I would probably have the same.
Okay.
I can't really see why I would pick. I think the White Sox is just not their time. It's too soon. The Twins,
they're kind of like the A's, the Twins a little bit, right?
They just can't
get close, but they'll
won't get to the postseason. But then, actually win a postseason game. No, that's not for us.
I think it's the Twins.
Who's your AL?
The Twins have lost 21 postseason games in a row.
It's like bonkers.
In a row.
Bonkers.
That's unbelievable.
Who's your AL MVP?
So I have AL MVP Giancarlo Stanton.
You think Stanton's going to get it?
Yeah, I think he's going to have a monster year.
I have his teammate. I think it's going to be Judge.
Okay.
I think Judge is going to have a monster season this year.
So the Yankee lineup is like one big protection thing because everybody protects everybody else because they all can mash.
There's literally, which will be a theme when we talk about the other NL team because they're very much the same way. And those lineups are just like, you have to pitch to them because you can't skip to pitch to the next guy.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Cy Young?
Boy, I just only thought a little bit about this. I'm gonna say
because I have a trendy pick.
you do.
Well, I don't think it's a trendy pick, but probably not a top pick.
Well, why don't you go first?
I think it's gonna be Giolito.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a good pick, and that is kind of a trendy pick.
I think because I think the White Sox, for the White Sox to be a great team, they need him to be great. And if I think the White Sox are going to be great, he's going to be a big reason why they're part of the reason why they're great.
I'll pick Garrett Cole.
I think that's a totally fine pick too.
I'll pick Garrett Cole. So, all right, well let's
Swap
do the National League.
Yeah,
Right?
swap over to the National League now.
So, all right, we'll go east to west,
Yep.
and I'll go first this time.
Yeah.
And at least my first place team is going to be the Braves, because I'm chicken to pick the Mets. And I will say development is what I put as my one issue for the Braves.
Here's my issue for the Braves. It's not even a regular season issue because I'll be honest, I don't see a way they don't make the postseason.
Right.
They're either going to win the division or win the wild card, but they need postseason. It's time to get it done if you're the Braves.
You're right. You're right.
Because at a certain point, this group you can't kind of keep getting there, and I think certain things for the Braves have to be scary about this season. Like, do you possibly think you're going to get the same season out of Travis d'Arnaud?
Yeah, well, that's a lot to expect. It was a lot to expect what you got last year.
Right, exactly. As a Met fan, you got 60 straight games out of Travis d'Arnaud. That in of itself is a kind of a miracle.
Yeah. But they have it all, right? They have pitching, they've got hitting. Yeah. They've got youth.
They have an MVP candidate.
They have more than one.
More than one.
Right? They've got probably 2 of the top 15 players in the National
With Albies and
Freddie Freeman.
Freddie Freeman and Acuna.
Yeah, right. I would say Acuna and Freddie Freeman.
Freddie Freeman. Yeah, they have 2 guys that could win. I think Freddie Freeman's going to have a monster year.
Yeah, I think so too. So, all right. So I say development because they have a lot of young pitchers in particular on that staff, and the center field is a young guy that they're going to put out there. Those players have to develop and be able to show they can play at the top level for a whole season.
You got to kind of get, you need to either have a championship NLCS or a World Series.
Braves have to be in the World Series this year.
Kind of have to.
If they get there, and the Dodgers will be standing there because that's what happens probably, then the Braves have to win.
The NL is an absolute slugfest because I think you could really make the argument you have 3 of the top 5 teams in baseball in the NL.
Yes, I'd say that's probably true. Yeah, and that would mean that you have the Mets second.
Yes, and I think they would be, for them, fielding.
Defense. That's what I wrote. That's what I wrote. One word. Defense.
One of the things...
Will they catch the baseball enough?
I think one of the things, especially people that have been following the Mets and paying attention, and one of the big things that have come out is the reason why that despite having a lot of very good pitchers, their pitching staff hasn't had a great ERA is that, oh my God, their defense is bad.
Yeah.
Like... When you have that lineup, when they could have some lineups up there that if they don't have guys like JD Davis and McNeil doing their part at second and third, and Dom and Nimmo are at least major league level outfielders because defensively they weren't, they lose a lot. There are games that they could cruise in that they don't because of that.
And look, everybody's a Met fan, loves Pete Alonso, but a better defensive team has Dom Smith playing first base for this team, and Pete is DHing, which is why the Mets, more than any other team, probably would say, God, I really wish we had the DH.
But I think that for them, other than that, they have the pitchers. They have a absolute murderer's row of a lineup.
Yeah, be fun to watch that team score runs.
There will be games this season that they can help the pitching staff out because they just kill the other team.
Yeah, they're gonna get on you, and that reminds me that lineup a little bit of the '86 team. Even from the pitching rotation, if you put DeGrom and Dwight Gooden there, and you put Stroman and Darling, and you start going down, you've got some parallels there, and you don't have a Hall of Fame catcher or Keith Hernandez at first base, but you got some very good ball players around the field in almost every position.
And that's gonna make them tough. And I mean, even this is kind of the thing where the star power for the next team is still there in the Washington Nationals. They still have their best guys, but
what is the one word for the Nationals?
Depth.
Yeah, or health. I put health. Health. I mean, you got Strasburg, you got Corbin, you got Scherzer. These guys are all old.
Corbin lost some of his velocity last season, and he did not look like some of the same pitcher. And if he's lost that velocity, because you got to think, eventually Scherzer is going to start showing some decline.
Yeah, they went with they're riding it out there one more time. It just seems like they
interestingly very similar to a team in the NL Central that we'll talk about.
But the Nationals, they have another 2 of the top 15 players in the National League also, in Trey Turner and Soto. Juan Soto is an amazing ball player. I'll preview. He's my pick for the MVP in the National League.
He might be the most complete hitter in baseball.
Yeah. And so
Which
young,
is
21 years old, having knowledge of the strike zone the way that he does. Look, he kills my team, but I love watching that guy play.
He's so good. He's such a good hitter.
Yeah.
And this is what makes a team like the Phillies, which would probably be a team that was a trendy dark horse pick to be a wild card team in either the other divisions, are relegated to 4th in the NL East.
Yeah, actually, I'm going out on a limb. I'm picking them to finish behind the Marlins.
You're picking, yeah.
I just look at now. Besides Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler, right?
They don't have much pitching.
And
they pitch in a barn box.
What was their big reliever pickup this year? Archie Bradley to really fix that bullpen.
Yeah, that's not what we would classify as a sexy pickup.
So they're a little old around the field. Also, the Phillies.
And that team is again. Oh man, if a couple guys on that team get injured,
yeah.
There's
just something about now. I think Girardi's a good manager, so it'll be interesting to see over a full season.
I think it's just you're playing in the most brutal division in baseball.
So I mainly just picked the Marlins because I think they'll be scrappy, and I think their pitching will take them further than people think. My one word for them is hitting.
For them, last season you have to think last season was a bit of an overperformance due to COVID,
right?
And when you get back to normalcy, it's hard for me to believe that they're just going to come back and operate in the same manner over a full 162 game season.
Yeah. I feel that they're really rebuilding, and they're just
especially when the teams around them got discernibly better.
Well, and that's a great point because you added up 3, so it's 57 times they have to play the Nationals, the Mets, and the Braves. They
did really well in that last season. I don't think
that's
they'll do
a lot. No,
I don't think they're going to do quite as well.
So, all right, let's bounce to the Central.
Central, I think. The number one team in this is easy, I think. It's the Cardinals.
Yeah. I think on the basis of the Arenado deal, just by itself,
they have.
If there was any doubt,
they have. Look what they have: 2 of the top 15 players in the NL, Arenado and Goldschmidt.
Yeah, I don't know if I would put Goldschmidt in that category.
He has not been quite the same guy that he was in Arizona.
I like the player. I don't know how old he is.
Arenado
33. Arenado's definitely, and he just but around the league, around the field, they've got really good ball players. DeYoung is not the best shortstop in the league, but he's a good shortstop to have out there. On a day, it's Harrison Bader's a nice player.
It's kind of just like all
Yachty
these
behind the plate.
Exactly. It's the same Cardinals team that they've been since really they've had Pujols. They have 1 or 2 unbelievable players, and then everybody else on their team is pretty good, and that gets them over the line every year.
So, the one thing that you can say about the Cardinals is that when you think about Adam Wainwright is their number 2 starter,
that's scary. Their pitching is not what it was.
Right. Miles Mikolas, I guess they don't really believe. Alex Reyes, these are guys that really had promising early parts of their careers.
I remember seeing them. They have some good stuff.
So but they're not excelling. Jack Flaherty is a clear number 1, excellent pitcher.
Yeah, no, and I think that's kind of the big difference, I think, for them compared to some of the other teams in this division is that they have that real clear dominant number 1 because, Kyle Hendricks exists, but...
Right, so perfect segue because if you have the Brewers at number 2, as do I.
Yeah.
Okay, so here is a projected Brewers starting rotation. Number 1, Brandon Woodruff. Well, a lot of people think a lot of Brandon Woodruff, and he's a young pitcher, shown some stuff. Corbin Burns, Brett Anderson, Josh Lindblom, Adrian Hauser.
Yeah, but the thing for the Brewers is...
Freddie Peralta is a relief pitcher on this team.
You move over to that lineup.
Yeah, and they bring in the Brewers, Colton Wong at second base, so that's a loss for the Cardinals, certainly. So defensively, right? Colton Wong, Lorenzo Cain, Yelich.
It's a good, strong fielding
Jackie
team.
Bradley Jr. now in the outfield up there.
That's a very strong defensive outfield.
So that makes a big difference.
So there'll be a good defensive team. There'll be a good hitting team.
Yeah, not a great hitting team. They have Omar Narvaez, one of our favorite fantasy players, by the way.
It's just that for the Brewers, they only have a Christian Yelich.
Right. And they have a Josh Hader. Right, so the problem is that we know that Josh Hader can't pitch back-to-back games. That's been pretty well determined, and the manager council has said that he wants to pitch Hader only in the 9th inning, which I think is really an odd thing to say now.
After we've seen so much data that's just not how you're supposed to play.
Yeah, you might only pitch him once every other day,
right?
But if he pitches in the 7th inning on one day, why can't he pitch in the 9th inning on another day?
Yeah, like if you need him in the 7th, use him in the 7th.
But Freddie Peralta's, they have a guy named Williams who had a great, came out last year that was like throwing fireballs. So the thing for them is they and the Cardinals are a lot better than the other teams in that division.
To me, this is unlike the AL Central, which is, an interesting division because actually all the teams are pretty good. This is an interesting division because compared to the other two in the NL, they're not very good.
Yeah, and I tried to pick. Let's see what I wrote down for the Cubs. What did I write down for the Cubs? Because I had them
Age.
I wrote down malaise. So when I thought about the Cubs, it's like, God, do their own players even like each other? There's just something about that team that just seems
dysfunctional.
Yes.
Yeah, like the problem I have for the Cubs is that this kind of goes back to our whole data analytics versus gut feeling, because there's absolutely no reason to believe that the Cubs should be able to beat out the Brewers or the Cardinals in their division, let alone the Mets, Braves, or Dodgers.
But let me
you're hoping that all the boys have one last run in them.
Yep, exactly right. So Chris Bryant obviously may or may not play the whole year with them if they decide to trade him. He's
Rizzo,
Javier Baez.
They have some.
They traded Schwarber ostensibly for Jock Pederson in left field, which is okay, maybe an upgrade.
I guess it's an upgrade just from the pure respect. Jock Pederson can actually play the outfield.
Contreras at catcher, Hayward in right field. If they all have their above,
if they all have their
season,
2016 season,
right? And Zach Hendricks.
It's a 5-year anniversary.
Kyle Hendricks is their number one. Okay, but here you go. Zach Davies is your number 2, and they brought back, because he did so well in Philadelphia, Jake Arrieta is going to be your 3. Did you see what he did in Philadelphia? He looked over his shoulder a lot.
I remember him doing that a fair bit, actually.
So,
and this is where we get to then, the team that kind of follows them up. So think about how harsh we were just on the Cubs. And we have a team that did better than them last season, and we're saying they're even worse.
Yeah, I can't pick it than this year. I mean, I think Joey Votto. I love Joey Votto. I just feel like I'm watching and they moved Suarez to shortstop from third,
which was a weird decision.
I just I don't know if it'll stay that way, but he's a third baseman. That way they could play Moustakas at his more natural position. I get that. But Moustakas is 35 or 36 years old.
Moustakas is like, what he is. He's going to hit 260 and hit 20, 30 home runs.
Let's bring back Tucker Barnhart. I like Jesse Winkler as an outfielder. I think
the issue that you're going to run into is that you had Trevor Bauer had a career pitching year for you that also synced up with one of the most unbelievably easy pitching schedules that we've ever seen.
And Trevor Bauer pitches in Los Angeles now, so they won't even.
They're not even going to benefit.
Enjoy
from
that. So yeah, Sonny Gray, Luis Castillo, quality pitcher, some good young pitchers.
I think if their pitching staff can be, for the Reds, the pitching staff, they would have to be unbelievable.
Yeah. So that's asking a lot of Sonny Gray at this point to be a number 1 starter,
right?
Michael Lorenzen, but I don't know. I kind of root for that team, and then the other team in the division. I wrote the same thing I wrote down for the Orioles.
Yeah,
and
everything.
I mean,
they're you almost feel worse for them than the Orioles because they feel like they're a team that's kind of rebuilding by mistake. Like they're just rebuilding because they don't have good players, not because they wanted to be.
I'm gonna name 5 Pirates. I want you to tell me what they do on the Pirates.
What position they play?
Mitch Keller, Tyler Anderson, Chad Kuhl, JT Brubaker, Stephen Bro.
No idea.
They are the 5 starting pitchers for the Pirates this year. Oh.
Like Josh Bell is their first baseman, right?
I think so.
He's like their one pretty.
No. They
got rid of him.
He's not there. Colin Moran's going to play first base for them this year. He's moving over from third base. Brian Hayes, right? The reason you watch the Pirates, aside from they have a fabulous stadium and the coolest uniforms, is Brian Hayes is going to be a contender for Rookie of the Year this year.
So that's a team that's just they're rebuilding.
Yep.
So then we go to the NL West, and I think this is an interesting division because this is actually, I think, a 2-team race.
Right. In fact, the other 3 teams probably can just say, you know what, we'll just take the season off. You guys play.
Yeah. The other 3 teams are just like, they're just going to be really happy when those 2 teams play each other.
Again, the same thing for everybody else, other than the Dodgers and Padres, has to play them 38 times.
Yeah. So you mean the Giants, the D-backs, and the Rockies, there's really not much to talk about. It's just varying degrees of sadness.
Yeah.
You've got the Giants who are just like, you know what? They're still probably flying high off of winning 3 World Series in 2010.
Let's see, what's special about the Giants? Somebody was saying, if you had to go out, you're a young Giants fan, I want to get a Giant jersey. Okay, which Giant player are you going to? Yeah, that's the problem. The two Brandons. No.
The aging
Buster Posey?
maybe.
34. So anyway, it's hard to watch it. You're right.
Same for the D-backs. But you know what? The D-backs, we knew they were doing this when they traded Goldschmidt.
Yeah.
This was their destiny. They got rid of their top players and they're rebuilding. And then you just have the actual factory of sadness that is Colorado.
Right. So the D-backs are only made better by the fact that they know they're not going to finish last.
They look better by comparison because they're in the same division as the Rockies. Whereas it's like, I just feel bad for Rocky fans because as Met fans, we had to deal with the Madoffs, but at least they had some abstract care about winning. I don't think the Rockies owner, who I forget his name.
Yeah, I'm forgetting it too.
But the return they got for Nolan Arenado, that was shameful.
Yeah, and Trevor Story's going too.
Yeah, and honestly, if I'm the Rocky fans, I feel bad for you because I bet it's awesome watching Trevor Story. I would want him on my team. And I would also understand why when he does leave that team, you would clap for him because he doesn't deserve to be trapped in that.
I wouldn't be shocked to see Trevor Story playing in the Bronx before the season's over.
Yeah. The problem is, what do they have to give up for him?
A lot. They have a lot of assets.
They
sent down Davey Garcia.
Just
who looked good.
Raid the Yankees for a bunch of assets. Start the rebuild.
Yankees will pay.
Because here's the thing: the top two teams in the division, one of them is on the upswing and is going to be good for a while, and that's going to be the Padres. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of young talent. They went out and spent a bunch of money this offseason. Tatis is a legit MVP candidate.
Yep,
they're going to be good.
Yep.
Problem is they have to play the Dodgers.
Right. Are they going to beat the Dodgers this year?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
That pitching staff is sick.
So the only of all the teams in Major 30 teams, I wrote down. So what do you write down? What are the issues the Dodgers have?
Traffic.
Staying out too late.
Traffic.
So I wrote depth ? Right. So there's no Kike Hernandez. So
if that's what I'm complaining about, oh no, we've lost Kike Hernandez. You have a Clayton Kershaw who looked good last season. He's not even the best pitcher on that staff.
And Kenley Jansen is rededicated to becoming, the relief pitcher he was, and I have a lot of belief in that guy. His fortitude is strong.
You know what? Honestly, their biggest issue is probably mobility to tweak anything. If anybody goes down, if they have any injuries, they don't really have a lot left in the cupboard where they could go out.
That's what I meant by depth.
Yeah,
right.
If
they got injuries,
if their bullpen looks weak, I don't know how they go out and get somebody to fix that.
But they're deep enough that they could survive a few injuries.
Yeah, it would have to be guys going out for the season.
So
and big guys.
All right. So how about your National League NLCS?
It's Dodgers versus the NL East. I just don't know which one.
Okay.
It's either Dodgers versus the Braves or Dodgers versus the Mets.
And then World Series? Who's going to the World Series?
I got to pick the Dodgers. Because I think there's something about this Braves team that just makes me think they can't get it over the top.
And what about the American League? Who's going to go? Who are they going to meet in the World Series?
I think it's Dodgers Yankees.
Yeah, me too.
I think
we didn't talk about this.
And the problem is that just when we're people that look at the data, and as much as I want to go with my gut, I don't have anything based on what this offseason was such a weird offseason because of the money situation where only the biggest teams had the money to afford to get the big free agents. So the best teams generally just got better.
The rich got richer. Yeah, and there is what plays into it is the fact that the CBA comes up after this season, so everybody's sort of positioning themselves for what it's going to look like.
The Mets were in the unusual position that their owner was the only owner in baseball who didn't take a loss because he wasn't an owner last season.
Right, and he had cash to invest, which I think they did to a degree, but they didn't do it as much as people thought they might.
If they went out and signed Bauer and Springer and Lindor,
or they would have even gone for Jackie Bradley Jr.
But I like what they did. I thought the Mets had a great offseason.
So last couple things.
Lindor.
Who are your league MVP in the National League and Cy Young? Since I gave you my league MVP,
Soto. Mm-hmm. I just think that you know what, Acuna.
I knew you were going to say that.
I think I have to pick Acuna because I think
he was my other guy.
Because the hard part about probably giving it to Soto is Soto's team actually has to compete for the wild card for me to want to give it to Soto. Unless it's the kind of thing where the only reason this team's above 500 is because they have Juan Soto, then you kind of have to give it probably to whichever team it's good. You know what? It could be a Met too. It could be Lindor. It could be, because I could see if the Mets win the East, giving it to the dominant
surprising
Met player. Basically, whichever team wins the East will probably have the MVP on their team, unless Mookie Betts or Tatis goes nuts.
And no, I was going to say Mookie Betts has won the last two, won two in a row, last two, because he won one in the American League and one in the National League.
The NL is ridiculous. It feels like, just because of how good the top 4 teams are.
So
actually, yeah, because if you're doing your top 5 teams in baseball, would you go not in any order? But I would say, is it for you like Yankees, Braves, Mets, Padres, Dodgers?
Yes.
Like, that's what's wild.
Yes.
Is that like,
yes.
Because I don't think it's hard to put the White Sox up there because they were a bubble.
They have too many issues.
They have too many issues. They're too unproven in a full season. Like, all of those teams, I know they can get it done over a full season.
And by the way, neither of us would be going out on a limb picking those 5 teams.
No.
I imagine most pundits are
probably
very
most
close
pundits,
to that.
but pundits, the other 2 teams that are probably punching in there, or 3 teams, would be the White Sox, maybe the Twins. Because some people I could see being really high on the Twins, but then I could see maybe the Astros or the A's.
So, and last, who is your Cy Young Award winner in the National League?
I got 2 names: DeGrom, Walker Buehler.
Yeah, and I just wrote DeGrom down because I feel like,
he's pissed that he didn't.
He could have won it last year.
I think he's pissed he didn't win it last year, and he's looked unhittable this spring training. I mean, he always kind of looks vaguely unhittable, but I mean,
yeah. So, okay, well, we'll be on record with these, so you can go back and check it out. And
it'll be fun to look back on this at the end of a nice real baseball season.
Didn't really go out on too many limbs here, but we can't wait, I'm sure, as everybody, to actually watch a regular season MLB game.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform.
And you can follow us on Twitter at Almost Cool.